Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Game Over Montreal. I am once again filling in as host for Andrew Berkshire, who, of course, is, just taking his weekends off and trying to focus on Olympic coverage on top of his, normal day-to-day duties with the show. But it's been a blast hosting yesterday and now today's edition of Game Over. I just wish the Canadiens would have at least won a game. It would be fun to say we would be doing this broadcast for Martin St. Louis' first ever coaching victory. But alas, the Buffalo Sabres get the best of the Montreal Canadiens, a 5-3 score. Jeff Skinner scoring 4 times against the Montreal Canadiens. He out literally by himself. Joining me on this Sunday afternoon, Super Bowl Sunday, Andrew Cohen, the senior editor of the Marshall Project and fellow at the Brennan Center. You may have come across his work in the Atlantic or for CBS. And Duane Steinel, the host of the podcast, 2 Goalies, 1 Mic, and of course, a big Buffalo Sabres fan. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. I want to let's get our first takeaways of this game out the way. Duane, I want to start with you, man. Obviously, coming from the Buffalo Sabres perspective, your takeaways from the game, but if you can, just kind of add a little Canadiens flavor if you can.
Well, watching from start to finish, that was probably one of the better first periods I've seen from this team in a while. Pressuring the puck in the offensive zone. I mean, I think he kind of said it in the broadcast right off the bat, like probably halfway through. They had Montreal playing with not a lot of confidence. Like they just were very skirmish with the puck. The forecheck was really on par, and just seeing Buffalo really just take it to them to start off the period. That's not something we've grown accustomed to in Buffalo. That slow starts, inconsistencies. I'd say with maybe about 10 minutes in the second, the start of the third, this is probably one of the more complete games Buffalo's played all year. And I love seeing Jeff Skinner score just because A, the smile, and B, I think Ralph Kruger has a mini stroke every time Jeff Skinner does anything positive because it's just that guy was in the doghouse for 2 years here and, was essentially told that, your job isn't to score goals. It's your job is to play defense. And he's buried on a fourth line role for almost 2 seasons. And to see him playing this well on a 60-point pace without Jack Eichel, it's a really big breath of fresh air here in Buffalo. Especially
Andrew, what about you?
Well, listen, at least they're losing with dignity, which is better than losing without dignity, which is what we had before Martin Steinel became the coach. But they're still losing. They lost to a good team in Washington. They lost to a mediocre team yesterday in Columbus. And now they've lost to a poor team in Buffalo. I like to see the effort. I'm glad that they're working hard. You see it, especially, I think, in the forwards, right? A little bit more jam. Paling had a good game. I'd like to see more from Gallagher. I'd like to see more from Anderson. Byron got an assist. I guess 9 players got assists or points in the game. So that's a good thing. But as long as you have defensive turnovers the way you have them, focusing mostly on poor Jeff Petrie, you're going to have a bad result. So, to me, this shows that you can blame the coach. But at the end of the day, this is a bad hockey team, the Montreal Canadiens. They're unable to beat other bad hockey teams, even at home, even with the last line change. And we'll have to see what happens here. But if it's going to be like this for the next 35 games, at least you feel like they're competitive. At least you feel like they're trying and there's some passion. And those were things that clearly were missing in the last, 10 games or so of the Dominic Ducharme era.
And Andrew, you have it right. But I think it's really interesting that viewpoint comes out. You're absolutely right. But had the Canadiens won this afternoon, the tune we'd be singing is not only did they get the win, but they got contributions from players who the team has been dying on having contributions from. Mike Hoffman scores I think it's like for 3rd goal in 10 games, but that's a guy who many fans have been asking for him to score even more. Jeff Petrie, who on yesterday's broadcast, we were describing him as a scapegoat for the penalty he takes before the end of the game. He scores a game-tying goal for the Canadiens today. And then Joel Armia, who I don't think he's gotten enough criticism.
He hadn't played in 18. He hadn't scored in 18 games.
Yeah, Joel Armia, I think like a lot of people have given flack to Jeff Petrie, but Joel Armia signed a contract in the offseason, and there are games where he is completely invisible. He showed up and he scored.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for Jeff Skinner and the Buffalo Sabres, we'd be looking at the Canadiens a little bit differently. And you're right. Other guys like Corey Schooneman and Ryan Poehling also contributing assists as well. I don't know. I mean, you're right. They're losing with dignity, but I will give them this. A lot of people who on the Montreal Canadiens were called on to step up at different points in the year and didn't step up. In some bursts, like they did at least step up, Andrew.
Yeah, they played better. They're playing better. There's no doubt that Martin St. Louis, by freeing them up from the system, has allowed them to have a little bit more jam. But you could also say that, if this is the level, Marc Bergevin didn't construct a team that's capable of competing at the highest levels, or even competing with the likes of the Buffalo Sabres and the Columbus Blue Jackets. No offense to both of those teams. Buffalo, it seems to me, is a year or two ahead of the Canadiens, sort of on its way back up, with a core of young players that I think the Canadiens would love to have, and which the Canadiens, quite frankly, had before they lost Cohen to the Hurricane, right? So you would have had a core there with Suzuki and with Caulfield and so forth. That core was sort of interrupted, you could say, and it's going to take another year or two to get it back. But no, listen, they were unwatchable even before the officials started to around the team started saying that they were unwatchable, and media people started saying they were unwatchable. They've been unwatchable for most of the season. So I'm pleased that at least they're showing an effort. I'm sure that the GM is pleased. I'm sure that Gordon is pleased. I'm sure that the coach is pleased. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Because it doesn't get easier from here, right? They're going to be on the road, I think, one more game, right? And then they're on a road
One more
trip.
game at home, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, they're going to be faced with hostility on these road games that they haven't been facing in the last couple of weeks. And it's not going to make it any easier. And I think the free fall continues. The one question I have after this weekend, you have now till Thursday, I believe, right, is the next game. So is now the time where you're going to make some moves and get rid of some of these veterans? Maybe sell a little earlier than you would like, just to change things up? I would like to think so, because clearly this group is not going to get it done. You might as well take a look at some of the young players, including Josh Brook, who I like, who's at Laval, who just started back. He, a couple of years ago, was touted as a potential NHLer. I'd love to see him make it into the line, but at some point, taking the place of Chiarot or Petrie or whoever else gets dealt.
Oh, okay. I'll stop you there, because one topic I do want to discuss: just before the game, Ben Chiarot put on injured reserve, twisted his ankle against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll get to other stuff as well in the podcast as well. With I want to definitely ask some questions to Duane about Don Granato and his thoughts on Martin St. Louis coming in. I do want to get to Ben Chiarot first, though. Your reaction, knowing all the trade chatter that has gone around with Ben Chiarot when you heard he was placed on injured reserve earlier this afternoon. We'll get to Andrew, and then Duane, you can give your thoughts.
Well, if you felt normally about the medical staff, if you had confidence in the reports from the medical staff on a team, you would get this report. You would hear the reporter saying it's not a big deal. They expect him back. I heard on the broadcast today that somebody said that had it been the playoffs, he would be playing. So it's not that serious. I'd feel fine with it. They're better safe than sorry. He is a valuable commodity. He's surely to be dealt in the next month. So why worry? And why make it worse by exacerbating an injury? But this team has had a terrible recent history of medical diagnoses gone wrong, right? We saw it. We're seeing it now with Dvorak, who was supposed to come back and didn't. We've seen it with Carey Price. We've seen it with Joel Edmondson. So I'm a little worried that this staff is either unable or unwilling to really share the details of these injuries. If I don't have to worry, then great. Let Chiarot have a week off. And maybe he gets dealt with when that week is over. Maybe they decide they don't want to risk it, but they have to be able to move him. They have to get an asset or two back for him, especially given his value. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And again, the defense is just awful. It's been awful now through two coaches. It's been awful now really for three coaches. And they're going to have to make some changes on the back end. And hopefully that starts with the trade deadline.
Yeah, Duane, what about you?
Yeah, I'm actually very interested to see. Well, I think a lot of the league is being focused on Montreal come trade deadline, because you guys do have a lot of pieces that I think are going to be shipped out. Ben Chiarot being one. The hiring of Martin St. Louis, in terms of here in Buffalo, I kind of compared it, and stay with me on this. When the
Of
Buffalo
course.
Bills went and signed Terrell Owens, it was a move that really got the fan base like off their seats. It's like holy crap, it's T.O. T.O. is in Buffalo. We never thought in a world he wasn't even close to our minds the day he signed with the Bills. Same thing with Taylor Hall. We never thought we'd ever be in on Taylor Hall. Now it was so out of sight, out of mind. And now I didn't even realize Martin St. Louis was even the conversation to be a head coach in the NHL, let alone, I don't even think it's, I think his extent of his coaching goes for AAA hockey, right? That was just about it.
But like not just like grown men playing AAA, like he was coaching like pee-wee kids.
Yeah, kids. Yeah, that's it. So I didn't even realize he was in the conversation. So when I look at it, it's like their season's it's lost. And what could it hurt to bring a guy like him, a Hall of Famer, who, in my opinion, another thing in my opinion is I look at him and I think of Cole Caulfield and how much this could do for his game, because they're essentially the same guy. Have the same types of struggles, have to fight the same kind of battles. St. Louis did it through his entire career and became a Hall of Famer. And, I look at a guy like Cole Caulfield and I think, wow, man, like if this works out, man, that could really help, get that kid to the next level. I'm excited to see what he can do for him. And it's really, if it doesn't work out, I mean, at least you tried something different, right? And again, it gets fans engaged. So for me, that's the way I looked at it, in a season that's lost. I think, that keeps your fans engaged. It gets them talking in a positive way for the most part. And, if it works out, maybe you look like geniuses.
Who knows? Andrew, I'd like your thoughts as well. And after that, I'm going to ask you a follow-up to your thoughts, Duane.
Okay.
Sure. On Martin St. Louis, yeah, listen, he may succeed or he may fail. But I love the idea of this team, finally, the management going outside the box and not just resuscitating some old coach or somebody with old tired ideas. Obviously, he's been a success at every level he's competed at. He's had to overcome a lot of obstacles. He's able to impart that on the team. You can see it already. So I think it's an indication of new management's willingness to bring in new people into an organization that really, really needs new people. I was struck this week. There was a comment that Kent Hughes made, I think to Eric Engels in a piece, where he was very blunt in saying, I've been really busy because I have to try to recreate a player development staff that doesn't really exist. And, a numbers, a data, an analytical department that does not exist on this team. And the more you hear these guys, Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, talk about the destruction they're sort of facing, the debris that's left over, the more you question this Bergeron era. And, the more you say, well, wait a minute, if it was this bad, if there were so many structural problems within this organization, if there were so fewer employees than they really needed in player development, in analytics and so forth, how did Jeff Molson allow it to go on for so long? So I think Martin St. Louis is a breath of fresh air. I'm rooting for him. I like what I've seen so far. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to overcome the next 2 months, which is going to have more losing in the next 2 months than he's probably had in his whole career. It'll be interesting to see if he gets another chance, if he's willing to have another chance next season, and what the team looks like. I would love to be able to have the organization give him some tools, take away some of the deadwood from this team, and there's plenty of it, and give him something more to work with to see how he can do. I think he'll do fine. And if he doesn't, as Duane said, it's really no great loss. You took a shot with somebody new, and somebody brought in new ideas to an organization that's really gone stale.
I really like the points you just made there, Andrew. I'll flip this to you, Duane, just because you obviously are following the Buffalo Sabres. They're not making the playoffs either, but they, at the very least on the onset of the year, from what we were seeing, at least the biggest example I can think of is that first meeting between the Canadiens and the Sabres, where the Canadiens get absolutely trounced. But the Sabres, a team that no one gave any credit to, they fought pretty hard. Have you seen that a lot from this team? The quote unquote dignified losing that Canadiens fans want from this team out of your Buffalo Sabres?
you see it. I'm not going to say the word consistently, but you see a lot more than you have in the last 5 years during the Jack Eichel era, and that's not a slight against Jack Eichel. Um, this team, this city was really kind of the moniker around us is blue collar. We work 9 to 5. We spend our hard-earned money to go to the games. And we want you to show us that you acknowledge us and how hard we work to be here, and that you're going to in turn put that same effort out on the ice every night. And that's why we love those teams from the late 90s and 2000s so much, because it's like they did that for us, consistently. Whereas in the last, 8 years, it's just been non-existent ever since, Doomsday losing Breer and Drury the same day, signing Vanek to that massive deal, and just everything just started, go downhill. And, this year has been different. Don Granato, who's been very much known for his ability to develop, you see it in guys like Tage Thompson, who, 20 games in the season already eclipsed his career highs in points and goals. And a guy who we essentially all wrote off a calendar year ago, who, was, a throw in for the Ryan O'Reilly deal, who, never lived up to the expectation. Now he is living up to the expectations. And, Granato is the one who moved him to center. You see that line of Tuck, Skinner, and Tage. It's possibly the best line we've seen here in like about 3-4 years, honest to God. And that's even with, that's going back to Jack Eichel with Skinner and Reinhart. And, every single shift they're out there, they're creating chances, they're causing havoc, and they just complement each other so well. But that just goes to show, like, the kind of that Granato effect that we've seen this year. You've seen the changes in Rasmus Dahlin's game, who was essentially neutered under Ralph Kruger. He was, man. Everything that was great about Dahlin coming out of the draft, we just didn't see it under Ralph. It was terrible. It was terrible to watch, and he got an insane amount of criticism for it because, we expect this first overall pick to, be this Clydesdale, and he wasn't for a year and a half. And now you're starting to see that in Dolls. And, again, another guy too, it was Casey Middlestat when he's healthy. He's really finally developed into the 200-foot center, that we wanted to see. I think he's, honest to God, our best two-way center right now. And that's not a slight against Tage Thompson, who's having a great year. But in terms of, playing a great 200-foot game, it's Casey Middlestat. And Don Granato and his ability to develop and be patient and just bring the best out, and I don't want to say the word mediocrity, but bring the best out of his players. That's the reason why we're so optimistic here in Buffalo. And, this trade deadline, I'm not really sure what to expect, because we've been dealing with a lot of injuries on those pieces you'd expect to deal at the deadline. So I'm not expecting a ton, but I just it's been fun to watch, man. Like I appreciate watching a team that really sells out on the ice almost every game, because it's something I haven't been able to see for a very long time.
I'll tell you what, like the way you're describing the Sabres, Andrew, you could tell me if I'm wrong. Canadiens fans, in a really weird way, should aspire to feel like what Duane feels with the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Yeah, I said that before, that I think the Sabres are a year or two ahead of where we need to be as a team going forward. You do have that nice nucleus of forwards, young forwards. You have this potential all-star defenseman, which the Canadiens don't have, a young defenseman like Dahlin. Maybe they have it in the system with Jordan Harris and Caden Gooley and even Logan Mailloux, if he advances. He's off to a good start. So you have potential there for the blue line, but you don't have it yet. And you'll just have a couple of young players on the Canadiens. And again, that's the mission that I guess Jeff Molson gave to Jeff Gordon, who's given it to Ken Hughes to, we have to figure out what we want to move forward with and who we want to get rid of. And right now there's, I would say 6 or 7 players that played today that will either be dealt at the deadline or won't be back next year, almost certainly. And there would probably be more, except that it's going to have a difficult time for management to move some of these guys, given the contracts that they have. Yoel Armia, as you mentioned, is just one of them. Bergevin gave one of his favorites another big deal, a sweetheart deal, and it's not going to pay off. It'll be interesting to see. I would love to know, just taking a step back, what those conversations were like that we know Gordon and Hughes have had with these players, right? They said that they've tried to talk to all of them. Where do you see yourself? Do you want to stay? Do you want to go? If it's a year or two of a rebuild, are you going to be able to do it? I would love to have a sense of what those players said. Like Brendan Gallagher, for example, to me, he's going to be wasted here. I like him. He reminds me of Dustin Pedroia, though, of the Red Sox at the end. He's got this fabled love affair with the city, and he's just not producing. But to me, Brendan Gallagher is wasted on a team that's going nowhere. The intensity that he has, the sort of playoff atmosphere that he brings to used to bring to every shift, he's not going to be able to replicate that in a team that has 8 wins as we're going into the middle of February. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation going forward. What happens to him? He may say he wants to stay around. He may think about it over the course of the summer. I just don't know. That's obviously a very big piece. But to me, he's emblematic of the problem and the challenges that management has right now.
That's a very good point as well. I want to ask a little bit more about the game, just to ensure we get both of us flowing in here. Speaking of flow, I don't know about you guys, but for different stretches of this game, there's a lot of long stretches with not too many whistles. On the Sportsnet broadcast, they were describing it as like pond hockey. Am I wrong in thinking this?
They wanted to get to their Super Bowl parties.
I'll ask for your Super Bowl predictions later.
Yeah. I honestly, I wouldn't doubt it, man. I play beer league a lot, and when you have those late night games, put the whistles away so you can get home. I was last week, man. I watched a guy get a hacksaw Jim Duggan at the blue line, two-handed in the ankles, and the ref just like, nope.
Good Lord.
Game. He wants to go home. So I can see it. I can definitely see it. Russ just want to get to their Super Bowl parties for sure.
I thought the play was choppy, right? For long stretches. It was not nearly as entertaining a game as yesterday's game, the Canadiens against Columbus, which I thought was really entertaining. One of the more entertaining games we've seen from the team all year. This game was not that. But I give credit to the Canadiens offensively. The forwards were tough. Caulfield missed a couple of chances. He is clearly energized by the coaching change. Suzuki, I thought, had a good game up and down the lineup. Byron, as I mentioned, he finally got a point. It's going to be interesting to see whether he's able to sort of get back into gear a little bit and bring the things he used to bring to the team. But yeah, listen, I think these guys, they want to get showered, they want to get home, they want to get into the dip and the chips and watch those ads at the beginning of the game, and we should be thankful actually that it wasn't a long drawn out thing between these two teams.
Thank God. I'm just checking the chat line here. If you're watching on YouTube, you are able to send us questions and chat with all of us. Someone asked, is that the Duane? I loved his radio rant. Yes, it is the Duane who went on Buffalo radio and ranted about Sabres management and using fake jerseys for some of their big players. Just break you away from the game for a second. I'm sure you've been asked about this 300 times, but can you please just tell us again about the rant?
Yeah. I always talk about the rant. So I've always been a guy who calls in on the radio, likes the voice. I like to talk about hockey. That I made a lot of friendships over the years that way with complete strangers. And I was on my way to the gym, and the night before or the night previous to that, I went to a game. And again, you couldn't even give away tickets for the Sabres that season. It was bad. And I couldn't find anybody to go with me. And I'm like, I wanted to go. So I asked my sister to go. I'm like, you want to go to a hockey game? She's never been to a hockey game. Let's go. So she came with, and she's kind of ignorant as bliss, like she doesn't know. She's watching. She looks exciting. So she's like, oh, she had a good time. But meanwhile, I was miserable the entire time watching us put up an egg against Ottawa. It was bad. And I was at the gym 2 nights later. I think it was 2 nights later. And I'm listening to the radio, and I'm going down that, the rabbit hole of negativity on Twitter, just reading all the comments. And I'm just like, geez, come on, man. And I knew what I was going to say before that. And then I'm like, they bring me in and I start talking. And at one point you hear my voice crack. I'm like, in my head, I kid you not, I go, you know what? Screw it. Go. And I just lost it. I lost it. And I've been a season ticket holder in some form or capacity since that arena's opened, essentially. Either I had the tickets with my dad or my cousin. And, to see what hockey has become in Buffalo, it really played into that, because growing up, man, you couldn't drive down a couple streets without looking down a side street and seeing kids playing street hockey. Winter, summer, spring, fall, didn't matter. They were everywhere. And it's not like that here anymore. But this team and the success of this team, not even just success, just the excitement that they bring, whether win or lose, it played a big part in that. And it's just been non-existent. And, you know, I've played hockey most of my life. I've coached for I coached for almost a decade. And it's because of that team. It's because of that team and the way how hard they used to play and how fun it used to be able to go to games. And it's just been, it was so depressing to watch that type of an effort coming out of an all-star break where you had a stretch of games against teams below in the standings where you were legitimately at that time could have made a push for a wild card spot. And to show up with that type of effort was just depressing. I just lost my mind. And apparently, and I'm not afraid to talk about it anymore. somebody at PSE, you know, went into called the radio station, you know, asked them to take the tweet with the phone call down. And once they took the tweet down, that's when, you know, people realize like, where'd the phone call go? And it's like, they're censoring Sabres fans. And then it got even worse. It got so much worse. And like literally my phone just did not stop vibrating for like 48 hours. It was crazy. And I debuted, like my first podcast I ever did was with Steve Dangle. He asked me to come on Super Bowl
I'm familiar
Sunday.
with that name.
It was on Super Bowl Sunday, 2 Super Bowls ago. And I remember sitting there in my room. I was going to my Super Bowl party and Steve's like, oh yeah, we'll bring you on. Like an hour and a half later, I'm on, I finally get on and we just, you know, I had a great time. And he's actually the one that convinced me to start a podcast. And it's been fun ever since though. But yeah, it was, you know, people seem to think that I struck a chord and that I was willing to say what everybody was feeling. And, you know, it caused it was fun, man. Like, you know, people say, oh, your 15 minutes of fame, whatever. It was fun. It was cool, you know, to get talked about in that light and something I really care about. And I'm really passionate about, as you can tell. And just, it was cool. And I've had fun doing the podcast ever since. And yeah, it's gotten slightly better. You know, it's hard to say better. It's hard to say better after you just got done trading Sam Reinhart and Jack Eichel, but it's gotten slightly better. I love Alex Tuck. Like
Canadians drafted his brother. His younger brother.
They did. Luke Tuck.
Yeah.
Luke Tuck is in the Canadiens organization. Right? Yes.
Yeah. You want to bring him over to Buffalo anytime. It'd be great. But just because that attitude Alex has, I want, like, that's what we need. And this isn't a slight against Jack Eichel. Listen, Jack Eichel was put in a situation with, I'm not going to say bad ownership. I mean, I probably should, but I'm not going to say bad ownership, but a lot of mismanagement from ownership, you know, a lot of bad decisions. The guy had 6 head coaches while he was here. 6.
You did.
You know, people are criticizing McDavid, you know, asking if McDavid's a problem, which I think is bananas. But he's on his 4th head coach now. And, you know, it's, how can you expect a guy with that type of turnover at GM, Kevin Adams was his 4th GM, I believe. And 6 head coach.
Adams, Botterill. I'm trying to remember who the other GM was.
His first GM was Tim Murray.
Tim Murray, yes. He's the one who drafted him, yes.
Then Botterill.
So Murray, then Botterill.
So the third GM then, right? Because Kevin Adams.
Okay, I'm trying to remember myself,
sorry,
but you're right. Tim Murray is the one who drafted Eichel.
Yes. 3 GMs in a short amount of time. That's a lot of turnover in 2 very important positions in your organization. Not to mention, you don't have a real president of hockey operations. The owner's wife is the president of the hockey operations. And This isn't a slight against her, but like you had about as much experience running a hockey team as St. Louis had coaching hockey. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very, very frustrating. And to see the kind of the criticism he used to get, sometimes warranted, most of the time unwarranted, but he wasn't ready to shoulder that responsibility. He just wasn't. And, you know, he was the guy who was made captain. And, you know, I don't think he was ready for that. I'm not saying he was a bad leader, but I don't think he was ready to shoulder all that, to shoulder this another rebuild. And, you know, you bring in a guy like Alex Tuck who cheek to cheek smiling, getting traded from Vegas to Buffalo. Who smiles getting traded from Vegas to Buffalo? Alex Tuck.
He's the future captain of the Buffalo Sabres.
100%. Anyone else is a mistake, in my opinion. And I mean, honestly, anyone wants to buy an Alex Tuck jersey with the C on it now, you might as well, because it's a good
It's early investment.
Honest to God, like, how could you name anyone else captain? And who would have expected him to come and play as well? He's a point of game player right now, and just, you see the energy he brings every shift, how he talks about the organization off the ice. And like, I tweeted it out, I think a couple days ago. I said, Alex Tuck, and this is not a slight against Jack Eichel, Alex Tuck could single-handedly save this franchise. And not just on the ice, in the locker room and in this community. This community has been suffering for a long time, to the point where, again, you don't see all those things I used to see growing up. You don't see the fan engagement. We have one of the worst in-game experiences in the league, and it's hard to believe considering the city we are and how much we love hockey. But it is terrible, man. It is so bad.
Perspective is very much everything. Andrew, I'll add this. As we've been talking, Ben Chiarot officially announced out for just 1 week. He was placed on injured reserve before the game started, but he will be out for at least a week with a lower body injury. Andrew, I want to get you in on here. One last question, and then I'll ask you both for your Super Bowl predictions. We were talking about Chiarot. We're talking about pieces that are going to get offloaded. And you could think of about 6 or 7 guys who they may be gone by deadline day. Who are you ready to say goodbye to on the Montreal Canadiens ahead of the trade deadline?
Who am I not ready to say goodbye to? I'm not ready to say goodbye to Caulfield. Although if you could get a big center for him who's young, I would think about it. I'm not ready to get rid of Suzuki. I'm not ready to get rid of Anderson, who I think still has some good years ahead of him on a contract that it may look a little bit dicey. I'm not willing to get rid of Romanov, who I think is going to be a third and fourth defenseman for many years to come. Otherwise, I mean, Carey Price is what Carey Price is. You're looking at trading Chiarot and Petrie and Kulak maybe on the blue line, which would be a big deal to me. You're looking at dealing the rest of the players. It seems to me maybe Paling, I think you keep. I like Evans, who's cost effective. So you do have a nucleus of 5 or 6 young forwards, but the rest can go as far as I'm concerned. I just want to say one thing to respond to Duane. The first half, I'm in my mid 50s. The first half of my life, the Canadiens won 11 Stanley Cups. And in the second half of my life so far, they've won 0. So even though hockey and Montreal are synonymous, I have to believe that Jeff Molson was concerned enough that this is a pattern now, 3 decades in the making. And that's why he made the move with Bergevin. And to me, one of the blessings of this season for this organization is that there aren't fans in the building right now. If there had been fans in the building when they lost to the Devils 7-1, it would have been ugly. And I have not seen ugly in a long time in Montreal with respect to the Canadiens. The other thing I just want to say, 20 years ago, this team should play like the team that was awful, that had Juha Lin and Craig Darby and little Oleg Petrov on his second incarnation with the team. They had no talent on that team, right? Stefan Quintao was the best defenseman 20 years ago, 99, 2000, and around then. But man, they competed. Trent McCleary, before he got hurt in the throat on the Super Bowl weekend. That team competed every day, and it was a pleasure to watch. And you knew they had no chance, and you knew they weren't going to make the playoffs. That is what this team could be, more talented. And if that's the way it's going to be for the next 35 games, I'm okay with it. They're obviously going to get a high draft pick. And to me, the excitement is who's going to be shipped out, what assets are going to be brought back, and how creative this team can be, this management team, in fixing what is clearly a really bad problem.
Gentlemen, before I let you both go, it is, of course, Super Bowl Sunday. The Cincinnati Bengals will play against the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. A prediction from either of you. Duane, I'm sorry. I know the Bills really, they were within 13 seconds of glory. I didn't mean to man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man.
You had the squib kick. I don't understand, Duane. Why not even talk about that? Do you think Alex Beck would have squib kicked? I think so.
I'll say this right here. A lot of criticism about not squib kicking, that came into play. I don't know how much of a difference the squib kick would have made. What would have made a difference is if you weren't playing a prevent defense with 13 seconds left, pretending like Kansas City didn't have all of their timeouts left, or at least 2 of their timeouts left. I remember
they had all 3 of their timeouts left.
Travis Kelce was like, "Or throw me the ball," like, because you're not protecting the sidelines at that point. They have their timeouts. Play normal defense. Rush the quarterback. Just take away the middle. That coaching, not coaching, lost in that game. Not a squib kick, man. This. All you got to do is stop them for 13 seconds. And honest to God, I believe it's the Bills in the Super Bowl right now. And this city is.
It's not. It's the Bengals and the Rams. You got to give us a prediction.
I know my prediction, though, is my heart says Cincinnati, but I think logic says the Rams for me. I think it's Matt Stafford's time. The guy has been grinding his entire career to get to this point. That team is so good on both sides of the ball. I mean, you can imagine, like, they started the season. They started the season with the team they had, and then they got OBJ and Von Miller. Like, that team is so good, and I think that this is their year. It couldn't have happened to a better guy for Matt Stafford. Not that they've won anything yet, but plus I don't know if I'm ready to see Joe Burrow win a Super Bowl yet before Josh Allen. So and let me hold this, man. Josh Allen has become kind of like the baby face of the NFL. The guy is a superstar now, man. Everybody loves him.
The Alex Tuck of football.
Yeah,
Alex Tuck of football. You did an interview for The Athletic on one of their hockey podcasts where I think he actually got to talk to Josh Allen, Alex Tuck, and kind of learn about Buffalo and all that. So there's at least some kinship between those two gentlemen.
Yeah.
I think
Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Duane's right. My heart is also with Cincinnati. They've been so bad for so long, but I like Matt Stafford, and I'd like to see him win something. This is one of those rare Super Bowls where I don't actively hate one of the teams, and will be happy no matter who wins. I just hope it's a better game than the one we saw at the Bell Center.
That's a very good point.
I here's the thing. It just feels like, I know they weren't in it, but it feels like such a long time since we've, not seen Tom Brady, at least in like a conference championship game or the Super Bowl. Like, I'm going to give, as much as I hated playing that guy in the AFC East, how about, like, that guy is the greatest to ever do it. Like, it's just like, I came to that conclusion a long time ago. Like, there's no denying anymore. You can talk about all the cheating scandals and stuff, but I am so happy that guy is finally out of the NFL. Like, finally gone, man. Like, finally, see you later, Tom. I don't know if it was his own decision or if Giselle is just like, listen, dude, like, it's got to end at some point. Like, I respect him so much, man. The guy is the ultimate competitor. If you're going to build a football player, the only thing you got to get from Tom Brady is the compete level and the willingness to win. You don't need anything else from Tom Brady, just that. And that's what won him 7 Super Bowls, is just that willingness to want it more than everybody else. And I really do think we have that in Josh Allen. I do.
I did not expect the end of Game Over Montreal to turn into a love fest for Tom Brady, but them's the breaks, I guess. Okay. All right. You heaped up a lot of praise on Tom Brady for a Buffalo Bills fan.
Yeah, how can you deny it? How can you deny it? Like, it's just,
I'm not going to deny it either, but I'm not going to be out here being all like, doing the way that you did it. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for hanging out with me on this Sunday afternoon. Duane is the host of the Two Goalies One Mic podcast. I believe you could probably get that podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Am I correct?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify. At Two Goalies One Mic, or you can just follow me at DuaneS39. That's where you pretty much find all our stuff. So,
yeah, that works out very well. And Andrew Cohen as well. I literally had your info right in front of me, and I completely.
I was
thinking about Tom Brady.
My son's favorite player is Tom Brady. So my son is very sad that he retired. I'm so happy. Agnostic about Tom Brady, because even though he's unhappy for 20 years, I usually was rooting against him. So,
you ever see that kid at all the Boston parades that always hold the sign, the amount of parades he's been to over the course of his life? I hate that kid. So much.
Funny enough, there are Canadiens fans who could probably say something similar to that effect. Andrew Cohen is the senior editor of the Marshall Project and a fellow at the Brennan Center. You may have come across his work in The Atlantic or for CBS. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for hanging out with me on Sunday. Enjoy your Super Bowl Sundays. whether you're having a party or just do it solo with your family, whatever you want to do. Just, of course, be responsible. And thank you all watching on YouTube or listening wherever you listen to podcasts for listening to my voice for these last 2 days on the Montreal Canadiens. 5-3 losers against the Buffalo Sabres on Sunday. But at least they showed a little bit more fight with Martin St. Louis as head coach, as opposed to what we've seen previously. That being said, the Canadiens, and we actually didn't mention this at all, are on a 10-game winless streak. It's not.
Hey, at least not 18. Maybe. Buffalo pulled off 18 last year, so.
I'll tell you this: the Canadiens look bad enough. They could go to 18.
Yeah, it's in play.
It's in play.
It's very much in play.
For Duke for till 12, and then I think Granato had 5 the last 6 though. So
at least for Andrew, I almost called myself Duane. For Andrew and Duane and Julian, saying so long and peace. Enjoy Super Bowl Sunday. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of Game Over, and Andrew Berkshire should be able to take over for me, and I'll go back to hosting the Chris Johnston Show. Brand new episode comes out tomorrow, so after the Super Bowl madness.
Great show.
Bye, everybody.